Chapter 3903. When Yuan, you're my wife, he moved by, pressed the elevator button and ignored the girl. Seeing that he had a heart of stone, the girl turned to look at Wen Yuan. Mrs. Yi, please tell CEO Yi that I really need this job. Wen Yuan wanted to say that she didn't care about Yi Mubai's business, but Yi Mubai's expression changed, and he called Secretary He over. Deal with it. Don't let her come to this floor in the future. His voice was a little cold as he continued. Let Suemo deal with it. If she doesn't, she can't be the manager anymore. Secretary he nodded and watched as Yi Mubai and Wen Yuan walked into the elevator. The girl was still crying. Secretary he pulled out a piece of tissue for her and said earnestly, You have to be realistic. You've seen how much CEO Yi cares about his wife. Are you purposely slapping CEO Ye's face with this face of yours? Or are you trying to take advantage of the fact that the couple isn't reconciled? Look at Manager Su. CEO Yi is so close to her. Why is she so close to CEO Yi, and why does she have his trust? That's because she doesn't have any ideas about the boss and has a good relationship with Mrs. Yi. That's smart. Little girl, listen to Sister He's advice and give up on this idea. Go to Korea and get some work done. No matter what you do, you can still come back to the company. Suemo, please arrange something for you. Maybe you can act in a drama or something in the future. The girl bit her lip and tears fell. But CEO, you will look at me more when I'm like this. Secretary, he sighed again. Secretary, he sighed again. Even if you put on that person's skin, it won't work. Besides, that person might not even be as important as Wen Yuan and CEO Ye's heart. Didn't you see just now? The couple is very loving. Don't play with fire. In the end, you'll only destroy yourself. The gains don't make up for the losses. Secretary, he had said everything. It was up to the girl whether she listened or not. In the elevator, Yi Mubai and Wen Yuan stood side by side. They didn't speak until the elevator reached the parking lot. Yi Mubai whispered that she had a car and wanted to drive herself. Sit in my car. He threw down these words with a commanding tone. Wen Yuan paused for a moment, but still got into his car. He sat beside him and slowly fastened his seatbelt. Yi Mubai took off his coat and threw it into the back seat. He fastened his seatbelt and looked at her. Don't you have anything to ask? Wen Yuan was dazed for a moment. About what? His gaze lingered on her face for a few seconds before he started the car, without saying anything. It was already 7 o'clock at night. After a while, Wen Yuan remembered that she had promised Xiang Nan to have dinner together in the evening. From now on, it would be about 8 o'clock before she drove home. She hurriedly took out her cell phone and looked at it. There were a total of 8 missed calls, all from the villa. Her face was a little hot, thinking that Xiang Nan was waiting for them to eat in the office. She lowered her eyes and said in a very soft voice, I'll make a call back. Xiang Nan is waiting anxiously. Yi Mubai glanced at her and didn't say anything. He just turned off the music in the car. Wen Yuan bit her lip after dialing the number. It was really a little shameful. When the call went through, she gently told Xiang Nan to eat first. Her parents would be home at around 8 o'clock. Xiang Nan replied without thinking, Then I'll wait for my parents to come back. Xiang Nan, eat first if you're hungry. Be good. Wen Yuan had always been very gentle with children. There was a faint and relaxed smile on her face because she was chatting with her son. End of this chapter. Chapter 3904. Wen Yuan, you're my wife, Yi Mubai, stopped the car at the red light and turned to look at her. Wen Yuan sensed his gaze and looked at him before quickly turning her head away. The smile on her face was a little restrained. Yi Mubai started the car again expressionlessly and listened to her continue talking to her son. After a few minutes, he hung up. Then, she said to him carefully, Xiang Nan still wants to eat with us. He said he had some fruit. He focused on driving and didn't reply to her at first. Wen Yuan's face was a little hot. She felt that she had put her hot face on his cold, but, however, she was in the wrong today, so she didn't say anything. At this moment, he spoke up. Looking at the situation in front of him, he said absent-mindedly, Wen Yuan, do you even need to please me when it comes to eating with your son? She was a little surprised. He continued, You should be angry that I forced you. Why? You don't even have the courage to be angry now that you've done something wrong? Wen Yuan was really a little angry. She bit her lip and glared at him. He didn't say anything else and just focused on driving. His side profile was extremely handsome. At this age, men were the most attractive. When Yuan thought about the girl who had plastic surgery, not only did she want to be in the top position, but she was also attracted to Yi Mubai's looks. When Yuan thought that it was normal for a man like him to be admired by a girl. Wasn't she like this in the past? However, she liked the artistic Yi Mubai. It had nothing to do with him now. As her thoughts ran wild, the car drove into the villa where they lived. The car stopped, and when Yuan got out, she wanted to go into the living room, but she suddenly took something out of the car. I'm going out for a while. Yi Mubai looked at the bag in her hand. She ran to the door, so he knew that she didn't want the servants to see her torn clothes. He didn't stop her and waited for her at the same spot, smoking a cigarette. When Yuan ran out and threw the bag into the trash, came outside the door before running back. He looked at her and smiled mockingly. He didn't say anything and went into the living room. Xiangnan had already rushed over and called out Daddy. Yi Mubai picked him up. Xiangnan hugged his neck and kissed him. Daddy, I got 2 more little red flowers today. Our Xiangnan is the best. He praised his son and kissed Xiangnan. Then, he carried his son into the dining room. Xiangnan leaned on his shoulder and winked at his mother. Mom, you've become uglier. Xiangnan's unintentional words attracted the attention of the servants in the family. That's right, Madame was clearly very beautiful when she went out, but why did she come back with such a set of clothes? Moreover, it looks a little familiar. Isn't this Sir's clothes? The aunties at home were all elderly people. As experienced people, it was easy to understand. All of them blushed. Really, in broad daylight. But Sir really cares about Madame very much. What kind of husband and wife are so loving when they have 2 children? After a moment of shock, when Yuan's face was very hot, he explained, Mom's clothes spilled on the coffee. Xiangnan was young, so he believed him immediately. But the elderly servants at home were not easy to fool. They all concluded that the clothes must have been torn by Sir. When Yuan was thin-skinned, he coughed lightly. I'm going upstairs to change. She quickly went upstairs. Her face was frighteningly hot. She thought to herself that she should buy a similar set on the way. She thought about it as she changed. End of this chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 3905. When Yuan, you are my wife after changing. She turned around and saw Yi Mubai standing behind her. His voice was indifferent. It's normal for a married couple to do it once in a day. You don't have to make a fuss. The servants in the house are all old people. There's nothing strange about it. When Yuan walked past him and said softly, That's what you think. What about you? What do you think? He reached out and grabbed her hand, pulling her over in a forceful and slightly barbaric manner. His voice was full of danger. You want everyone to think that you and I are just nominal? Every day, we just share a blanket and chat without doing anything. Do you want Kong Xiao to think that you've been married for a few years and are still as pure as ice and as clean as jade? I didn't think that way. She blurted out. Then she turned her face away tiredly. Yi Mubai, don't go too far. I lied, but I did it with good intentions. Don't hold on to it. You've already done it. What else do you want? Do you want to keep talking to me in such a weird tone? Weird tone? He chewed on her words and sneered. When Yuan, your way of putting it is really unique. Why? You can't stand talking to me and think that I'm stinky. Is it because you feel especially happy talking to Kong Xiao and talking about art that you're so happy that you're lying to me? You're unreasonable. When Yuan struggled to get away from him. If you want to quarrel, go ahead. I don't want to quarrel with you. She walked towards the door. He said softly behind her, When Yuan, you actually don't even want to quarrel with me. In your mind, this marriage is just a compromise. You've never thought of falling in love with me again. To you, I'm just the father of Xiangnan and Yihui. I'm just a man who sleeps with you every night to satisfy you. In fact, I'm nothing. Her body froze. She turned around and stood straight with her back against the door. She asked softly, What are you trying to say? Yi Mubai, are you mistaken? The person who has to do it every night is you. What do you mean by satisfying me? Is the perverted way you did it today to satisfy me? He stood under the chandelier in the changing room, his handsome face alluring. He was the face that every woman wanted to marry, but at this moment, in Wen Yuan's eyes, he was completely detestable. 2 years ago, he was the one who said that this was fine. He was the one who said that he loved her. Was it wrong for her not to love him? Was it a sin? Or was it because he regretted it and felt that he didn't get what he wanted and was about to fall out with her? Her lying was just a fuse. Wen Yuan smiled. Yimu Bai, if you're not satisfied with such a marriage, you can. Before she could finish, he stopped her sternly. Wen Yuan. Then he stared at her in horror as he walked towards her step by step. His hands were on the door above her, trapping her with his body. He looked down into her eyes and said word by word, Wen Yuan, don't even think about it. She closed her eyes and turned her face to the side. Yimu Bai, I don't know how to communicate with you anymore. He looked at her and said in a low voice, Xiangnan is waiting for us downstairs for dinner. Go wash your face and calm yourself down. Don't let Xiangnan think that Daddy and Mommy are quarreling. His fingers caressed her face gently. With that said, he let go of her and moved her to the side before opening the door and leaving. After he left, Wen Yuan suddenly covered his face. She wasn't the only one who was enduring this marriage. He was repressing it too. She couldn't understand why he didn't consider it since that was the case. They could have discussed it. End of this chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 3906. Say you love me. One, however, his attitude made her understand that she couldn't bring it up. Otherwise, he might not let her see the children. The current Yimu Bai wasn't the Yimu Bai of the past. When necessary, he would use the ruthlessness of the business world on her. It wasn't that Wen Yuan wasn't afraid. Yimu Bai was like a frog being boiled in warm water. Until now, the 2 children had become her weakness. He knew that all too well. She splashed water on her face in the bathroom and calmed down for a long time before walking downstairs. Downstairs, Xiangnan hugged Yimu Bai. It was rare for him to be so clingy. As a father, he also indulged his son and allowed him to hug him. He had always been stricter with Xiangnan than with Yihui. He always felt that he was stricter with boys. When Yuan walked down the stairs and sat beside him quietly, Xiangnan looked at her. Mommy, did you cry? Wen Yuan was stunned for a moment and smiled. No, Mommy's eyes hurt a little. Little Xiangnan felt very sorry for his mother. He came over and said, Mommy, I'll help you blow it. Wen Yuan's heart was a little warm. It was an indescribable feeling. When Xiangnan blew it, it was like a warm breeze. It was especially comfortable and warm. She reached out and rubbed her son's head. Our Xiangnan is a little warm boy. Xiangnan's little face was a little red. He then asked to sit down and eat. Wen Yuan smiled and reached out to pat his little head again. Xiangnan lowered his head to eat. Obediently, she continued to watch him tenderly. She only blinked when her eyes became a little watery. However, when she finally managed to restrain herself, she saw Yimu Bai's gaze. His gaze was complicated. She didn't understand and didn't want to understand. She didn't dare to understand, so she looked down. He just kept staring at her and didn't say anything. It was getting late after dinner. Wen Yuan accompanied Xiangnan to read for a while. Before going to bed, Xiangnan laid on the pillow and asked softly, Mommy, did you and Daddy quarrel? Wen Yuan was stunned for a moment. Then he forced a smile. Why would you ask that? Your father and I are quite close. Xiangnan's little face was deep in thought. He then looked at her. Really, don't let your imagination run wild. Of course it's true. Wen Yuan kissed his forehead. All right, be good and go to sleep. Xiangnan obediently closed his eyes. Wen Yuan stared at his little face in a daze for a while. Xiangnan secretly opened his eyes again. Wen Yuan smiled and asked, What is it now? Xiangnan hesitated for a moment before saying, There's a kid in my class whose parents got divorced. Wen Yuan was stunned. Did her relationship with Yimu Bai make Xiangnan so insecure? She didn't know how to explain it to Xiangnan for a moment. She just smiled. Then they must be separated because they can't live together. Xiangnan, the world of adults is very complicated. Xiangnan immediately asked, Mommy, will you and Daddy not be able to live together one day? No. Wen Yuan kissed his son. Because Daddy and Mommy have Xiangnan and Yihui. You're all mommy's babies. Xiangnan stared at her eyes and asked very slowly, what about your father? Does mommy love daddy? I heard other kids say that daddy and mommy love each other very much. When Yuan had a headache, were all the kids in Xiangnan's class so precocious? In order to make him feel at ease, she had to coax him. Of course, mommy loves daddy. Yi Xiangnan walked around and finally got the answer he wanted. He went to sleep with satisfaction. End of this chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 3907. Say You Love Me. When Yuan sat for a while and covered Xiangnan with a quilt. When she left the room, she saw Yi Mubai at the door. He was standing by the door, and she didn't know how long he had been standing there. When Yuan didn't know how much he had heard, she just said in a low voice, Xiangnan is asleep. She wanted to leave, but he said softly behind her, Wen Yuan, you lied again. She knew what he was referring to. She didn't want to talk to him and walked quickly. However, he didn't let her go. He caught up to her and grabbed her wrist. Don't you have anything to say to me? Wen Yuan was really angry. She had been tormented by him until now because of a white lie. I'm very tired, Yi Mubai. Can you let me rest? She couldn't bear it anymore. He stared at her. Aren't you tired talking to Kang Xiao? Don't be picky, okay? She closed her eyes. Yi Mubai, do you have a quarrel with me? Or are you too free? If you're too free, go find those women who want to please you. You can do whatever you want with the one in your company who made Lin Cece. I think she will cooperate. After she finished speaking, she felt a little regretful. However, she was really exhausted by him again and again. Yi Mubai's cold gaze fell on her face. After a long time, when Yuan opened her eyes and looked at him, he leaned over to her face and said in a low and hoarse voice, Wen Yuan, you have no conscience. As he said that, he took a step back. It's you who can't forget the past, not me. It's because you can't forget that Kang Xiao is cute in your heart. And I will always be the man who betrayed you and will always leave you, right? She was speechless for a moment. She even thought of Bai Xueli's words. She said that Yi Mubai should go to the psychology department or the physiology department. She thought that maybe there was something wrong with him because he had been vasectomy for a long time. Wen Yuan's thoughts were a little chaotic. She was also surprised that she could stay so calm at this time. Perhaps they knew that the peace between them for the past 2 years would erupt one day. It was just a matter of time, and they were also prepared for this day. He vented his dissatisfaction to his heart's content, and she was somewhat numb. After a long time, she said softly, Let's all calm down. Otherwise, Xiangnan will ask me if I love you again. Is it strange? He smiled strangely and asked her the same question. Wen Yuan, do you love me? In the long hallway, she stood face to face with him. The distance between them was very close, but it also seemed very strange. She didn't even give him a word of love. After a long time, her lips moved. Yi Mubai, say no more. He held his forehead. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. After saying that, he walked straight to the other end of the aisle, while Wen Yuan was still standing there. She suddenly smiled. When she lied to him, he did not even dare to listen to her lies anymore. She went back to the master bedroom to take a bath. She lay in the luxurious bathtub and looked at the mirror. In the mirror, she saw the bruises all over her body. They were left by him this afternoon, and he said that he wanted to sleep in separate rooms. So be it. He said that he was here to satisfy her. When did she, Wen Yuan, fall to the point where she needed him to satisfy his lust? Was this how he thought of her? She thought about it indifferently and got up. In front of the mirror, she was shocked by the bruises all over her body. He must have left them on purpose. She recalled that he had been purposely doing this to her for the past few days. End of this chapter. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 3908. Say You Love Me. Wen Yuan wiped herself clean and quietly walked back to the dressing table in the bedroom. She sat down and applied skincare products bit by bit. She looked at herself in the mirror. Looking at her youthful face, she thought about what Yi Mubai said about love. He asked her if she loved him. Wen Yuan didn't know, but she knew that he didn't love her. What he loved was just how he imagined it to be. The current Wen Yuan wasn't Wen Yuan at all. She was like how she was at home when she was unmarried. She was asked to be gentle and virtuous, suitable to be a wife at home. just like how she was now. Wen Yuan looked at herself in the mirror. It was a little strange. Perhaps for a woman, this kind of life was already very happy. But for Wen Yuan, this wasn't what she wanted. Yi Mubai was successful, and she was just an accessory to him. She didn't like going out with him because when people introduced her, they would say that she was Mrs. Yi, not Wen Yuan. She hated it when people always called her Mrs. Yi. In her heart, if she wasn't loved, she didn't want to admit that she was his. Wen Yuan might have said these words to him in the past, but she wouldn't do it now. Marriage was like stagnant water, and she was just used to it. But she had never been satisfied. Wen Yuan changed into a set of white pajamas and laid on the bed. It was late at night, and she felt very comfortable being alone. She couldn't sleep, so she took the tablet and chose a romance film to watch. When she was choosing, she saw a film that Yi Mubai had shot before. She didn't know why, but she chose one of his films. It was also the first film when she was crazy about him. It had been more than 10 years since then. When Yuan clicked on it, he felt a little complicated. He looked at the Yi Mubai from more than 10 years ago, and it was as if he was seeing another Wen Yuan. The Wen Yuan who was filled with passion, the Wen Yuan who had infinite possibilities, and the Wen Yuan who was crazy about love. The Yi Mubai from more than 10 years ago was very artistic, completely different from the current Yi Mubai. Wen Yuan found that her heart was still beating fast. She couldn't describe the feeling. The tablet's blue light flickered on her face. She leaned against the headboard of the bed. It was very soft. She stared at Yi Mubai on the screen. She reminisced. She missed those days when she was in love. She replayed it several times and accidentally fell asleep. The blue light on the tablet blinked. Late at night, Yi Mubai stood in front of the French window in the guest room, smoking quietly. He recalled the strange and evasive look on Wen Yuan's face when he asked her if she loved him. Not only did she not love him, but she also did not want to love him. His gaze deepened as he glanced at the bed. Without showering, he lay down and finished the cigarette between his fingers. Closing his eyes, he could smell the familiar scent lingering at the tip of his nose. It was the lingering scent from his sex with Wen Yuan in the afternoon. This kind of aura made him a little restless, and he couldn't fall asleep at all. Yi Mubai lay down for a long time, thinking of that hateful woman. Later, he wondered why he slept in separate rooms and why he let her go. He quietly got up and returned to the master bedroom. The lights in the master bedroom were off, but there was a faint blue glow. He walked closer and saw that the tablet beside her hand was playing a video. He reached out to take it and saw that it was a video of him in the past. Yi Mubai was a little surprised. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Wen Yuan. She leaned against the headboard and fell asleep. She was wearing silk pajamas, and her long black curly hair fell on her shoulders. Her face was calm, and she looked very peaceful and beautiful. End of this chapter. Chapter 30:909. Yi Mubai looked at it quietly for a while, then turned off the tablet. Then he began to unbutton his shirt. When Yuan woke up, her hands were tied to the round pillar at the head of the bed. She was shocked, struggled, and looked at the man lying on top of her. Yi Mubai, what are you doing? You're awake? His voice was horribly hoarse, and he bit her neck. When Yuan turned her face to the side, she didn't know where he learned this perverted way of doing things. He hadn't treated her like this in the past. She closed her eyes. Let go of me. You said I'm your wife. Is this how you treat your wife? This is how you treat other women. He nibbled her chin gently, and his voice was a little low. Wen Yuan, do you know how men treat other women? She was so embarrassed that she didn't want to answer him. Why aren't he talking, huh? His voice was hoarse. Wen Yuan's long eyelashes trembled slightly. What do you want me to say? He chuckled. How do men treat other women? Huh? She naturally refused to say it, and turned her face to the side. Wen Yuan, if you don't want to say it, I'll demonstrate, huh? He said in an extremely nasty manner. She turned her head and stared at him in disbelief, and then he had treated her so viciously. He had personally taught her how to treat a woman outside his home. It was despicable, rough, and shameful. Wen Yuan couldn't help but cry in the end. She bit her lips, and her face was slightly red. Her long hair was dripping with sweat on her shoulders, and she looked terrible. Now you know how men treat other women? His warm breath was on her neck, and his voice was low. At this moment, Wen Yuan knew that if she said no, he would treat her even more harshly. She was afraid of Yi Mubai's stamina. She really didn't know how he could have such stamina if he was in the office all day, or if he was just discussing business with others. Her eyes were slightly red, and she looked up. Her red lips, which were swollen from kissing, trembled slightly. Got it. The next second, she was hugged tightly by him. Yi Mubai hugged her tightly and buried his face against her neck. His voice was hoarse. Wen Yuan, say you love me. She stared at the ceiling and did not speak for a long time. She was exhausted, but she couldn't sleep because he wouldn't let her go. After a long time, she softly asked, "Is it important to you?" He did not answer, but nibbled at her neck, loosened the tie on her wrists, clasped her hands around his neck, and kissed her wildly and roughly, as if to melt them into one. He had never done this before, but no matter how hard he pushed, she did not tell him what he wanted to hear. The result of too much indulgence was that the two of them slept late together. When Yi Mubai woke up, it was already 10 in the morning. He picked up the bedside watch and looked at it. Then, he put his hand on his forehead. Last night, he had done it about 7 or 8 times. For a man, it was a little too indulgent, but even he was a little too much. Turning sideways, he looked at Wen Yuan lying on her side in the hollow of his shoulder. She was curled up, wearing the pajamas from last night. At this moment, it was a little messy, and she looked very seductive. Wen Yuan was the kind of woman who was like a rich lady when she was in the hall, but like a slut in bed. Although she did not take the initiative, he liked her body and liked to do it with her. This was probably the only harmonious aspect of their rather dull relationship as husband and wife. Of course, she was usually just cooperative. Only when she was particularly aroused would she bite his shoulder uncontrollably and let out a soft moan that he liked. With this thought in mind, he placed his arm across her waist and carefully compared the changes in her figure. After giving birth, her waist was still very slender and soft. She did not look like a woman who had given birth to 2 children at all. The only change was that she was fuller and still very seductive. Yi Mubai carefully compared them, and Wen Yuan woke up in his arms. When she realized what he was doing, she looked down. Why didn't you go to work? End of this chapter. Chapter 39:10. If you sleep late, let's go in the afternoon, or don't go today. He turned over and pressed her down, kissing her neck. Mrs. Yi, I was exhausted last night. Wen Yuan's face was still a little red from last night. She turned her face aside, and her breath was a little unstable. You said we'd sleep in separate rooms. So, was it the end of sleeping in separate rooms? Yi Mubai smiled lightly. I regretted it last night. His fingers gently stroked her face, and he deliberately said in a low and slow voice, "You are my wife, and it's your duty to make love to me. Why should I give up such a right?" She was a little angry. This is not the way to be a husband and wife. You don't like it? He put his thin lips on her ear and chuckled. I'll change it next time. Wen Yuan really couldn't stand him like this. She closed her eyes gently. Isn't it good to be like before? Wen Yuan, that can't satisfy me. He suddenly said so. She was surprised and slowly opened her eyes to look at him. She didn't know he was always so obsessed. He stared at her, not letting go of any expression on her face. Then he said hoarsely, I want you to love you. He leaned in her ear again and said shamelessly, if you love me, you can do whatever you want. But if you don't love me, I'll do it to you every night. Wen Yuan turned her face away. Yi Mubai, can you be more shameless? He smiled and let her go. Wen Yuan didn't want to lie in the same bed with him again, so she lifted the quilt and got up. But the moment she got up, she frowned. It hurt. She kept the previous position, thinking how many times did he do it to make her like this last night? When she was thinking, an arm wrapped around her waist, and then his voice was hoarse. Does it still hurt? She answered, a little. Her expression was definitely more than a little. Yi Mubai let her lie down, and he got up to get the medicine. She looked at his back in only a bathrobe. He was slender and strong, which looked very sexy. When he came back, she said, why did you change your mind? What? He pressed down on her hip with one hand, not letting her move, and applied medicine for her with the other. This kind of thing was very intimate and shameful. Wen Yuan bit her lips and endured it. Actually, she wanted to apply the ointment herself, but he wouldn't let her. After wiping it, Yi Mubai screwed the lid back on and placed it in the bedside table. He looked like he was planning to use it for a long time. Wen Yuan's gaze was a little dazed. Then, he looked straight at her and smiled faintly. I realized that teasing you is much more interesting than giving you the cold shoulder. She got up and walked into the bathroom. Therefore, Wen Yuan knew that his anger was not over. He had not forgiven her, although she didn't think she was guilty. She leaned against the headboard and lay still for a while, turning her head when he came out. He only had a towel wrapped around his waist, and he was using the towel to wipe the water droplets from his black hair. Wen Yuan thought of something. I'm going back to my mom's house today. I bought a gift for Wen Qing's birthday. He was very opposed to her going back to her parents' house. If she went, he would accompany her. If she was really busy, he would get the chauffeur to take her there, and each trip would not take more than 2 hours. Wen Yuan thought to herself that he probably didn't like her going back. Actually, she rarely went back and would usually not see him if she could. After she finished speaking, Yi Mubai put down the towel in his hand and looked at her. Must you go? End of chapter. Chapter 39:11. Wen Yuan pursed her lips and said, I didn't want to go, but my mother called me twice. She thought that he would object, because in his opinion, Wen Qing's birthday was just a trivial matter, and it was not worth it for her to go to her mother's house. However, Yi Mubai looked at her for a while and said, I'll go with you. Wen Yuan was surprised, and then she subconsciously refused. No, I can go by myself, or let the driver drive me. But he seemed to have made up his mind. He took off the bath towel around his waist and said lightly, Let's go and see Hui after we go. Wen Yuan covered her face because of his action. He was really. Yi Mubai didn't care. He thought that there was nothing between husband and wife. He went straight to the changing room to get dressed. When he came back, Wen Yuan asked, Didn't you bring Yui back? He looked at her and buttoned up his shirt. Isn't she fine with my mother? Wen Yuan couldn't help saying, But Yi Hui is very young. I think it's just a few days. He thought that she was making a fuss and glanced at her. Don't you think that you have too much family business? It's just a few days to relax. By the way, Xiaonan will start learning the piano this week. You should pay attention to his mood. Wen Yuan looked at him and said, You didn't discuss it with me. I can teach him. He came over and leaned over to look at her. Wen Yuan thought that he was going to get angry, but he just reached out and gently touched her face. I don't want you to work too hard. You're just looking for an excuse, aren't you? She stared at his eyes. You just don't want me to touch the piano. You're afraid that when you play the piano, you'll think of Kong Xiao, right? Yi Mubai's expression became cold. He stared at her eyes and then sneered. Your analysis is very good. He straightened up and looked at her. I'll wait for you outside. Wen Yuan knew that he was angry, but she was also angry. Why should he be angry? Would she be happy if he raised her at home and gave her a good life? Would she be happy? He had a strong desire to control her, but she didn't even realize it had come to this. She lowered her eyes and calmed down for a while before getting up to change her clothes, brush her teeth, and wash her face. When she walked downstairs, Yi Mubai was drinking tea. At this moment, his handsome features were charming, and there was no trace of excessive indulgence. Wen Yuan recalled looking at himself in the mirror just now. It was clear that he hadn't slept well. She silently thought to herself, he clearly used a lot of strength. Hearing her coming down the stairs, he put down the English glass in his hand and said quietly, Have some breakfast to suppress it before you go. Wen Yuan wanted to say no, but he had already started reading the newspaper again. He looked like he would not allow any rejection. Wen Yuan could only eat a little. After he was done, he said, I'm done. Only then did he lift his eyes to look at her outfit today. It was a very standard outfit. Although it was decent, Wen Yuan could wear it several times better than this, but she didn't. She always looked normal when she walked out, except for yesterday. Thinking of yesterday, he couldn't help but think of Kong Xiao again. His heart was filled with anxiety, and he picked up the car key. Let's go. Wen Yuan followed behind him, holding a gift for Wen Qing in his hand. It was a limited edition Hermes bag, which Wenqing liked very much. Yi Mubai got into the car, fastened his seatbelt, and then looked at Wen Yuan. You don't seem to want me to accompany you back to your parents' house? No, you're thinking too much, she said in a low voice. End of this chapter. Chapter 39:12. Yi Mubai smiled and started the car. He said calmly, Am I thinking too much? She didn't know what was wrong with him. Wen Yuan thought that he was either late or had some psychological problems. If he had the time, he might as well take care of the artists in the company. That way, he wouldn't go for plastic surgery. He drove all the way to Wen Garden, where Wen Yuan lived before he got married. The Wen family was also very powerful. In the past, it was comparable to the Yi family. However, in the past few years, the Wen family support had not been enough. It had fallen behind by a large margin. However, with Yi Mulin's relationship, the Wen family's position was still stable. He stopped the car, and Wen Yuan got out of the car first. Yi Mubai looked at her as if she was running away. His gaze was a little deep. She might not have realized that she was actually avoiding their marriage. She didn't want to face the fact that she used to love him. So, the current Wen Yuan wouldn't love him. Yi Mubai sat in the car and smoked a cigarette. He puffed slowly. Wen Yuan went in first and saw Wenqing sitting on the sofa. Sitting next to her was a man with very fair skin. He was the type of overseas returnee that Wenqing liked. Most of them were involved in investments. At this moment, Wenqing was almost half leaning in the arms of the muscular man. When she saw Wen Yuan come in, she smiled a little exaggeratedly. Sister, you're back? Wen Yuan nodded and passed the bag to her. You asked for it. Wenqing opened it. When she saw the style, her eyes lit up. This bag cost more than $1 million, and it wasn't something that could be bought with money. The Wen family was rich, but they couldn't spend it like this. Although she was happy, Wenqing still pretended to be annoyed. Sister, isn't this style a little too old? It's suitable for a woman in her 30s like you. It's not suitable for a little girl like me. Wen Yuan was speechless. Then I'll change it for you. She wanted to wrap the bag properly, but Wenqing immediately grabbed it in her hand. It's a so-so. Then, she looked at the muscular man beside her. Darling, oh, the muscular man kissed her passionately. His face was red and his heart was racing. Wen Yuan picked up the glass of water to cover up. After the kiss, Wenqing pouted coquettishly and said that she had taken off her makeup. Then, she began to touch up her makeup. At the same time, she said with some disdain, Sister, it's not that I want to scold you, but look at you dressed like this every day. Why would brother-in-law be interested? There are a lot of women in his company. If you don't take care of yourself, not only will you lose to women, you will also lose to men. Wen Yuan thought to himself, is it that exaggerated? Wenqing smiled again and said pretentiously, That's why my brother-in-law won't accompany you anymore. Just as Wen Yuan was about to say something, a large palm pressed down on her shoulder, followed by Yi Mubai's deep voice. Wenqing, I don't remember having the hobby you mentioned. Then, he sat beside Wen Yuan and put an arm around her shoulder. Wen Yuan, you look good like this. Wenqing laughed exaggeratedly. She lay in the arms of her boyfriend, George, and trembled as if it was a funny thing. Later, she smiled tenderly and said, Brother-in-law, how did you fall in love with my sister? Look at her age. She doesn't have any interest, and she doesn't have any thoughts. Wen Yuan's expression was a little ugly. However, Yi Mubai was indifferent. I remember that after your birthday, Wenqing, you will also be 30, right? You will also be one of the old women that you mentioned. Besides, how would others know about the interest of a married couple? As for thoughts, he smiled. Don't you also like people without thoughts? All right, Wenqing, your boyfriend's Hun muscles are trained really well. He was hinting that Honda was brainless. Wenqing was so angry that her face turned pale and red. She stomped her feet and was about to explode. Yi Mubai said coldly, This bag is worth more than $1 million. No matter what, it is Wen Yuan's sincerity towards you. However, the money came out of my pocket. I have the right not to give it to someone who insulted my wife. He reached out and took the bag. Why don't you do charity? Wen Yuan was also stunned. She did not expect him to do that. She said softly, Isn't that too much? End of chapter. Chapter 39:13. He gave her a sidelong glance. He had always thought that Wen Yuan was too easy to talk to. Wen Yuan did not say anything. Wen Qing's hands were empty. She was dumbfounded. She had been looking for that bag for a long time. Now that she had finally gotten it, how could she let it go? She quickly squeezed out a smile and said coquettishly, "Brother-in-law, I'm just spouting nonsense. Sister is so pretty. Of course there will be men who like her." Those words hit Yi Mubai's sore spot. Wen Qing took the bag and looked at their expressions. She thought that she had guessed correctly. Back then, Wen Yuan and Yi Mubai had a falling out because of Kong Xiao. They almost lost their child. She had always said that they shared the same bed but dreamed different dreams. As a sister, she did not look happy at all. She was very restrained in front of Yi Mubai. Actually, Wen Qing did not envy Wen Yuan at all when he was married to Yi Mulin in the past. Yi Mulin was a politician. Her father was also a politician. She had no interest at all. However, Yi Mubai was different. He was a big shot in the entertainment industry now. He had so many resources in his hands. She wanted to be a star too. However, Yi Mubai did not pay much attention to her. She could not do anything about it. Now, Wen Qing had touched the sore spot of their discord, so she smiled sweetly. "My sister likes artsy men, just like Kong Xiao." Right after she said that, Mother Wen came over and reprimanded Wen Qing. "What nonsense are you talking about? He is teacher Ye's son. Wen Qing, you just have to take care of yourself. Get married soon so that I don't have to worry about you." Wen Qing was very good at acting coquettishly. She hugged Mother Wen's arm. "Mom, I know. Don't we have George?" "George? Elisabai? He was a Chinese. Why did he have a foreign name? He couldn't make it overseas. When he returned to China, he opened a fake company and became the CEO. Only Wen Qing was so useless. She gave a gift of a few thousand yuan on her first visit. Of course, Mother Wen did not like it. Wen Yuan, on the other hand, was different. When the Wen family was doing well in the past, she married Yi Mulin. Later on, there was a mistake, and she married Yi Mubai. In the past, they didn't think highly of her. However, in the past 2 years, Mubai had helped Old Wen establish a lot of connections overseas. This was especially important to the Wen family. Moreover, Mubai was generous to them. Mother Wen was especially polite to Yi Mubai. Of course, this caused Wen Qing to be dissatisfied. She tried to act cute, but it was useless. Meanwhile, George left dejectedly. Mother Wen reprimanded her. "Don't bring just anyone into the house. This kind of fake rich man who can't afford a house in B City is waiting to be a Phoenix man. You're not young anymore. Keep your eyes open. Don't fool around all day. You already have a bad reputation." Mother Wen was angry. This daughter was too much. She changed a few boyfriends in a year. She was not worried at all. Wen Qing didn't care. She stretched out her hand and admired her nails. "It's okay. I can't get married. Brother-in-law will take care of me." Mother Wen was speechless. How could she say something like that? Wasn't she afraid that Wen Yuan would be angry? Wen Yuan drank his tea and didn't say anything. Yi Mubai smiled faintly. "Wen Qing can go to my company's public relations department." Wen Yuan knew what kind of place Stars Entertainment's public relations department was. It was Su Mo's territory. Many public relations people drank and slept with them. Yi Mubai was quite vicious. Wen Qing wasn't stupid. She could tell that he was mocking her. She pouted and didn't say anything. End of chapter. Chapter 39:14. Yi Mubai got up and pulled Wen Yuan up. He said to Mother Wen, "Mom, Wen Yuan and I are leaving. We'll go and see Feng Wei later." Mother Wen was confused. "Aren't you staying for dinner? It's late." "No." He looked at Wen Yuan. Wen Yuan said that you want to buy a gift for Wen Qing. "We are passing by. Let's have dinner next time." After saying that, he looked at Wen Yuan deeply. Mother Wen knew that she had offended Yi Mubai today. Whether it was Wen Qing or her, Yi Mubai was angry, but he restrained himself. He probably felt that he had treated Wen Yuan harshly and allowed Wen Qing to speak without thinking. In fact, Wen Mubai's mother did not think that Yi Mubai cared about Wen Yuan that much in the past. It was only because of the union of their child that Wen Yuan was just hot-headed. But now she didn't think so. It was obvious that Yi Mubai cared about Wen Yuan more than she thought. He said that to warn her. Mother Wen forced a smile. "Okay, Next time I come back, I'll cook a table of delicious dishes for you. Yi Mubai smiled slightly and left with Wen Yuan. As soon as they left, Mother Wen turned around. Wen Yuan was sitting on the sofa and admiring his new bag. He was obsessed with it. Mother Wen said coldly, "Wen Qing, be careful of what you say next time." Wen Qing didn't raise her head. She was still admiring the bag with an indifferent expression. "Mom, what do I have to be careful of? I used to talk to Wen Yuan like this, and he didn't get angry. Look, he has no temper now. But Yi Mubai has a temper." Mother Wen said seriously, "You have to be careful. What's there to be careful about? They don't have a good relationship. Brother-in-law suspects that my sister has a mistress. They will divorce sooner or later." As Wen Qing spoke, she suddenly thought of something. Her eyes flashed with an evil light. "Mom, my sister can marry them. After they divorce, brother-in-law can marry me too." Mother Wen was stunned. When she came back to herself, she slapped Wen Qing immediately. She was so angry that she almost fainted. "Shut up. I won't forgive you if you say such words again." Wen Qing covered her face and bit her lips. "Mom, you are biased. Wen Mubai is your brother-in-law. Remember this clearly. If you dare to do anything, I'll break your legs. Otherwise, you can leave the Wen family." Wen Mubai's mother was extremely angry. "Since when did your values become so skewed?" Wen Qing was not convinced. "Why can't I be better than Wen Yuan? I'm younger than her, and I know how to dress up, but she only knows how to seduce men. Yi Mubai has long since abandoned her." Mother Wen was so angry that she didn't want to talk with her and went back to sleep. "Wen Qing, you really lost your face for a few bags." She was so Wen that she didn't want to talk with her. Wen Qing said, Wen Qing was. Qing. She was really furious. Wen Qing and Wen Yuan had completely different personalities, but both were worrisome. Wen Yuan was Qing. Wen Mu was right. Wen Qing and Wen Yuan was. Wen Qing was. Wen Qing's right. Yi was. Wen Mu and Yi was. Ti Qing. Mubai had seen all kinds of beautiful girls in the entertainment circle. If one day he felt Wen Yuan was boring and tired of her, what would Wen Yuan do? When Wen Qing's mother was worried, Yi Mubai got in the car with Wen Yuan. When he started the car, he said, "Go to my mother's place?" Wen Yuan looked at the time. It was already past 12 o'clock. It was impolite to go there at this time. Besides, Yi Fenghui would take a nap. End of this chapter. Chapter 39:15. "Let's eat outside," he said. Wen Yuan glanced at him and didn't object. He drove her to a vegetarian restaurant. The business was good, and it was lunchtime, so there were many people. Yi Mubai went over, and the manager led her to the private room. She could tell that he came here often. The private room wasn't very big, but it was clean and elegant. The waiter immediately brought a pot of good tea and asked for their order. Yi Mubai said calmly that it was the same as before. "Mr. and Mrs. Yi, please wait a moment." The waiter smiled. Wen Yuan took a sip of the tea. It was surprisingly good, so she took a few more sips. Yi Mubai watched the waiter leave and then looked at Wen Yuan. Wen Yuan lowered his eyes and drank his tea. He looked at her clothes again. Actually, what Wen Qing said was true. Wen Yuan usually dressed up like an older man and did not look outstanding. The reason why he never objected to it was because when she was at home, they spent most of their time in bed. He cared more about her body. He was the only one who knew about his wife's body. It was best if other men didn't know about it. This was Yi Mubai's dark thoughts. Wen Yuan looked up and saw him. His gaze also fell on her face. After looking at each other for a long time, he smiled faintly. "The tea here is very good." She made a sound of uneasiness. Yi Mubai also picked up the teacup and took a sip. After a while, he suddenly asked, "Does it still hurt?" Wen Yuan was startled and then bit her lower lip. He watched her expression and chuckled softly. He wasn't sorry at all for his bad behavior last night. Wen Yuan drank half a cup of tea. Just when she was about to talk to him about what happened last night, the waiter had already entered and she could only forget about it. All the dishes were served. There were 6 dishes and 1 soup. It looked very good. Yi Mubai picked up a piece of vegetable for her. "Try this." She was actually not used to it. She rarely ate alone with him. It was either at his parents' place, at her parents' house, or at a banquet. so it was rare for them to eat face to face. She ate silently. It was surprisingly good. She looked up and saw his deep gaze again. When Yuan asked softly, "Why aren't you eating?" He took a sip of tea. "How is it?" "Pretty good." She smiled and watched the waiter leave. Then her gaze landed on Yi Mubai again. Just as she was about to speak, he put down his glass and looked at her. "Wen Yuan, are you sure you want to talk about this with me now?" She was stunned, and his voice became hoarser. "We'll talk about it tonight." For a moment, she was speechless and didn't say anything. Yeah, this is not a good place to talk about things. During the meal, he didn't eat much, but when Yuan ate quite a lot. When he left, he paid the bill. Then, they looked into the distance. "Looks like you like this place." For a moment, she didn't know why he was suddenly so nice to her. He wasn't like this in the past. Only in bed, torturing her. "Wen Yuan, it's not that I don't want to be good to you. It's that you didn't give me a chance." He smiled slightly and reached out to hold her hand. She wanted to pull away, but he didn't let her. After that, he held her hand all the way to the parking lot. He opened the car door for Wen Yuan to get in. When he got in the car himself, he suddenly said, "It's still early. Let's go to the mall." End of this chapter. Chapter 39:16. Wen Yuan's face was to the side. Hearing his words, he turned around and looked at him for a long time before saying, "I don't have anything to buy." Yi Mubai looked at her quietly. "I want to buy something for you, Wen Yuan. Don't you think it's weird for us to be like this?" She looked down. This is the life of a housewife. It's not as good as a professional woman. He sat, rubbing his chin with his fingers, and said very slowly, "You still want to go to work?" She did not make a sound. He continued, "Wen Yuan, is this the only way to please you?" Surprised by his choice of words, she stared at him blankly. Yi Mubai smiled. "If you want to open a music store or go to a school to teach, it's fine." She looked at him in surprise. His hands were on the steering wheel, and his smile deepened. "But I have a condition," Wen Yuan said subconsciously. "I can stay at home." He chuckled softly. He didn't mention any conditions, nor did he mention anything about going to work. He just started the car. After a while, the car arrived at Yintai Square. He got out of the car first. Wen Yuan didn't want to get out. He went around to open the car door for her. "Wen Yuan, there's a hotel up ahead. I heard the suites are not bad." She glared at her and got out of the car slowly. When her feet touched the ground, she frowned. Yi Mubai noticed. He held her, his voice a little hoarse. "It won't happen again." He was indeed too rude last night. Wen Yuan didn't say anything and walked in with him. They had almost never shopped together, except for that one time when they got married. She didn't know what he was going to buy for her, so she just followed him. She thought that he would buy clothes for her, because Wen Qing had given him a cold shoulder today, but he didn't. Instead, he took her to a lingerie and pajama shop. "I don't need this." She bit her lip and refused to go in. Yi Mubai said calmly, "You can wear whatever you want outside, and I don't think your taste is so bad that it can't be seen. But pajamas and underwear are the rights of a husband." Wen Yuan bit his lip. "I do." Yi Mubai looked at her and said airily, "The style is too conservative." He was walking in front of her. She immediately pulled him back. "Yi Mubai, I didn't." He looked at her seriously and smiled. Men have the final say in this kind of thing. Wen Yuan was a little angry, but she also knew that if she didn't go along with him, he would probably play those perverted games again at night. She was really afraid. Yi Mubai directly walked into a very high-end lingerie shop. A set of clothes started from tens of thousands of yuan. Wen Yuan said softly, "Wait for me outside." Yi Mubai frowned. "Aren't your feet hurting? Sit down, I'll help you choose." Wen Yuan wasn't willing, but he was very strong. In the end, she could only sit there pretending not to know him and turn her face away. Yi 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 Tian Yi. When he looked at her and smiled warmly. Wen Yuan turned her face away, unwilling to look at him again. There weren't many customers in the store, but there were a few women. Surprisingly, he didn't seem out of place and was carefully choosing for her. He spent more than half an hour helping her pick out 4 sets of underwear and 3 sets of pajamas. Although they weren't very sexy, they were still very feminine. When Yuan watched him pay with his card, and his face was a little hot. End of chapter. Chapter 39:17. Yimu Bai was very at ease. He walked towards her with the bag. Let's go. She got up and followed behind him. You agreed to let me teach. Yimu Bai didn't stop walking. You like being a teacher so much. Her voice was very soft. I don't want to stay at home all the time. It's too leisurely. Yimu Bai, you don't want to play mahjong all day, do you? This time, he stopped walking and looked at her face quietly. After a while, he smiled. Actually, there's nothing wrong with that. When Yuan looked at him quietly. Now she understood that he had just said it casually when he agreed to let her work. He didn't take it seriously at all. Yimu Bai smiled again. Are you angry? No. This time, when Yuan walked in front, he was obviously angry, and he stood there for a while before he followed. After getting into the car, the atmosphere was a little gloomy. He held the steering wheel with both hands and was silent for a while before he said, Wen Yuan, let me think about it. With that, he turned his head and looked at her quietly. You know what I mind? At this moment, the oppressive feeling from his body came again. It was a familiar feeling. All the previous ease was an illusion. The reason why he didn't let her work was because he didn't want her to come into contact with Kan Xiao. He didn't trust her. When Yuan's expression slowly became cold, she looked at him and didn't say anything. After a while, she turned her head away and looked out of the window. At this moment, it was as if the magic disappeared. All the previous ease disappeared, and they returned to before. Yimu Bai's fingers held the steering wheel, and his voice was low and hoarse. When Yuan, wait until, he looked at her sideways. Wait until you love me. She looked at him and finally knew that there were some things that he wouldn't allow. Suddenly, her strength seemed to be drained. She leaned against the back of the seat and said weakly, Yimu Bai, you don't have to do this. After the hope, there was deep disappointment. Perhaps he thought that she was rich and good as Mrs. Yi, but she wasn't happy at all. Not all. And he didn't know. When Yuan didn't say anything, he pursed his lips and looked out of the window, feeling a little tired. His heart was very tired. Yimu Bai started the car and went to Su Fu and Hao Yun's place. Because of their quarrel, when Yuan had no intention of bringing Yihui back after seeing her, she was a little disheartened. Regarding this marriage, if it was just a matter of making do with it before, now she really did not know how to get along with him. He was always too egotistical, always deciding everything for them. His desire to control was getting stronger and stronger. He wasn't like this before. When Yuan thought silently as he leaned back in his chair. At this time, he had left dinner at Su Fu's place and coaxed Yi Hui to sleep. It was already 10 o'clock. When Yuan looked out of the window and at the neon lights that filled the sky, he felt a little complicated. Yimu Bai was focused on driving and had no intention of speaking. The atmosphere was rather tense. Half an hour later, the car stopped at the villa, and when Yuan got off. Then, Yimu Bai opened the car door and got off. He looked at her back and then at the clothes he had bought in the car. He picked them up and followed her. He walked into the hall. Because it was too late, most of the servants in the house were asleep. It seemed lonely and empty. He looked up and saw that when Yuan had already reached the second floor. Yimu Bai smoked downstairs and then went upstairs. End of this chapter. Chapter 39:18. When he pushed open the bedroom door, he saw Wen Yuan sitting there without taking a shower or sleeping. He seemed to be waiting for him. He put the bag on the sofa beside her and put down his coat. He smiled faintly. You don't like it? Wen Yuan shook his head. No. He sat down and smiled again. Are you still angry about what happened in the afternoon? What about you? When Yuan looked into his eyes. Yimu Bai, are you still angry about what happened that day? Yes. He gave her an affirmative answer. I'm angry because I care about you. When Yuan laughed angrily. Really? What about you? Lin Cece, Lin Danny, how many times do I have to be angry? Yimu Bai, I admit that I liked you in the past, but I don't have to like you. It's my freedom. After she said that, she saw that his face was very ugly. He stared at her in shock and said slowly, You finally said it. You don't like me. When Yuan, who else can you like? Kan Xiao. I want to see what you can still like about him when he's nothing. Wen Yuan's breath stopped for a moment. Then she blinked her eyes gently. She couldn't believe that he would say such a thing. Yimu Bai, can you not be so despicable? Sure. He leaned over and put his arm around her head, pressing his face against hers. He whispered hoarsely, as long as you love me. Wen Yuan's voice trembled. Our matters have nothing to do with others. Yimu Bai, you can't. I can. He stared into her eyes and said word by word. Wen Yuan, you know I can from the moment you met him. I said I don't want to see him, didn't I? Her face was close to his, and tears fell from her closed eyes. Yimu Bai, it wasn't like this in the past. Yes, it was like this in the past. I felt guilty and regretful. So I tacitly agreed that you and Kan Xiao Yin had been going back and forth for 2 to 3 years. You were so happy when you received his gift that you would read it alone in the study for 2 hours. At that time, he stared at her expression. Did you ever think that I was your husband? At that time, you only thought of other men. I didn't. She didn't want to explain to him that those were all sent by Kang Xiao. They were all places she had talked about with him before. Every time he went to a place, he would send a gift to show her, pretending that she had been there. But even this was interpreted by Yimu Bai as flirting. She denied it, but he didn't believe her. He narrowed his eyes and stared into her eyes. His voice was very soft. Don't tell me that you don't have any feelings for him. Not all. It's not like that. I really didn't. When Yuan finally couldn't take it anymore and pushed him away almost frantically. Yimu Bai, don't add to the drama. He smiled. If you want me to believe you, sure. She looked at him, her heart heaving. His thin lips gently spat out a few words. Please me. Wen Yuan was shocked. Then he said very softly, Yimu Bai, we are husband and wife. He reached out and placed his hand on her face. His slender fingers gently stroked her delicate skin. His voice was soft and hoarse. This kind of thing between husband and wife is very common. Didn't I do it for you? His fingers gently touched her red lips, as if he was playing with her, but it was more like he was teasing her emotions. He just wanted her to lose control. I remember that you liked to do it in the past. Why don't you love me anymore? Can't your body accept it? Into this chapter. Chapter 39:19. He leaned forward again and pressed his lips against her ear. His voice was sexy and clear. I heard that many women like this. Wen Yuan, you don't like it, huh? She simply couldn't listen to it anymore. She bit her lip. I'm not as despicable as you. Really? He stopped smiling. Kang Xiao and you platonic? As he said that, he grabbed her hair. He didn't use much strength, but it still hurt her. Wen Yuan endured the pain and slowly raised her head. Are you going to be rough with me again? No. He smiled lightly and quickly let go of her. His eyes glanced at the panties and pajamas on the side, and he smiled bitterly. He said, Wen Yuan, I feel that nothing can move you. No matter how hard I try to be a good husband and a good father, you don't seem to see it. She lowered her eyes. She didn't understand why he said that he would wait for her to love her, and now he was like this. Were all men fickle? Yimu Bai got up and walked to the bedroom door. He didn't say anything, but when Yuan knew that he was really sleeping in separate rooms with her, she actually didn't care, and he was angry that she didn't care. She sat quietly for a while and went to take a shower. After changing into her pajamas, she couldn't fall asleep. Every time she quarreled with Yimu Bai, she would go to the study to look at the things that Kang Xiao gave her. Wen Yuan carried a big box and walked to the desk. He opened it and took out a lot of things. Even if it was a leaf, it still represented freedom. She looked at it quietly. Marrying Yimu Bai didn't mean that she would lose herself. She now felt more and more. He didn't understand her. When Yuan picked up a specimen and thought bitterly, maybe Yimu Bai didn't have the time, effort, and interest to understand her. He bought her panties and pajamas just for physical enjoyment. Just now, when he said that, she felt very insulted. In his heart, was there only sex between a couple? Her dreams were worthless in his heart. She thought, there's nothing to explain. Sleep in separate rooms. Sleep in separate rooms. Cold War, Cold War. When she put the box away, she turned around and saw Yimu Bai's expressionless face. He was standing by the door, wearing a black nightgown. His entire temperament was so gloomy that it seemed like he could grow black wings at any time. Wen Yuan stood there without moving. He stared at her and smiled. Done admiring? With that, he turned around and left. Hence, the Cold War began. Other than restraining himself in front of Xiangnan, he pretended to be calm. But in private, although they lived in the same villa, they almost never saw each other. Even if they did see each other, they treated each other as air. Of course, this kind of Cold War was mostly one-sided by Yimu Bai. Wen Yuan had been very calm, as if nothing had happened. He came back later and later. Just like before, there would occasionally be some tidbits of news that would appear on the entertainment headlines. True or false, it was quite difficult for Stars Entertainment's public relations department to handle. This kind of thing could just be done with public relations. Why would they need to make it onto the headlines? On a weekend afternoon, Su Mo asked Wen Yuan out for tea. It was a quiet afternoon, and everything was very comfortable. The two of them sat facing each other. Su Mo lowered her head and gently stirred the liquid in the coffee cup. She took a sip and looked up. Wen Yuan, how's the relationship between you and your wife recently? Why do you ask? Wen Yuan smiled and took a sip. It was a little bitter because she didn't put sugar in it. End of this chapter. Chapter 39:20. Suemo rolled her eyes. Don't you watch the news? Wen Yuan stirred the spoon gently. Are you talking about those scandals? Suemo was quite shameless in front of Yimu Bai, but she was still very reliable when it came to Wen Yuan. Scandals can also become true. Wen Yuan, haven't you been taking President Yi too lightly in the past 2 years? That woman's whole body was almost hanging on President Yi in the news yesterday. I won't say anything more. Anyway, let me remind you that if a man is hungry for a long time, even a sow will look handsome. Wen Yuan couldn't help laughing. Are you soaking the jar again? Suemo said seriously, but there's nothing wrong with what you said. Anyway, President Yi went for a drink alone with the investor last night after the banquet. I heard it from Secretary He. It's absolutely reliable. Wen Yuan, grow up. So many women are eyeing Yimu Bai. He's handsome, rich, and has a child. Which woman doesn't like him? Only you can stay calm. Suemo felt a little angry at the end of her words. Some people could easily have everything, but they still felt that it was nothing. Wen Yuan was like this, so she was anxious for him. Wen Yuan brushed his hair. You've said it hundreds of times. I still say the same thing. If you can live, then live. If you can't, he will let go. Suemo was a little sad. She reached out and placed her hand on the back of Wen Yuan's hand. The past is the past. Wen Yuan, you have to look forward. Yes, you do blame him and hate him, but try to accept your current life. You'll feel better. Wen Yuan smiled desolately. I want to live a good life, but he needs me to live according to his way. Suemo, it's very hard for me. Suemo sighed. Wen Yuan, do you know how many women envy your life? You don't have to work hard and you can do whatever you want. Wen Yuan lowered his eyes and smiled when he looked up. Suemo, do you want such a life? Will you feel very happy? You're not allowed to do what you want. The only thing you're allowed to do is stay at home with the children or go shopping. Suemo asked in a low voice, do you still play the piano? Very little. He bought a grand piano and put it at home. I used to play it, but now I'm really not interested. Suemo, I feel that my married life is getting more and more boring. I feel like I'm just a decoration in his house. Wen Yuan said in a low voice, his business has been very big in the past 2 years. His company went public, and so many women threw themselves at him. I feel like an old woman at home. I have to make myself beautiful in case my husband cheats. When Wen Yuan first started to like Yimu Bai, and even when she married him, he wasn't like this. She liked that kind of carefreeness, not the controlling desire he had right now. Suemo licked his lips. Wen Yuan, have you ever thought that CEO Yi is doing this because he cares? He doesn't care. She's do. He could do whatever he like. Mo do with he do what he does. Mo test controlling because heat. There's nothing wrong with starting over, Wen Yuan said faintly. Right? Didn't he say he was with you? Mo's yawn about. Su emote, Mo mo's it when ate she about that. Mo of T emote. Then, the two of them fell silent. Suemo put his hand on the back of her hand and whispered, I like Kong Xiao, but he likes you. When Yuan, you really can think about it. Choose between Kong Xiao and CEO Yi. I don't think you're as unmoved as you said. I've seen it all these years. Really think about it. He's a good man, and he's been waiting for you. When Yuan subconsciously shook his head, Suemo smiled lightly again. Don't think about it for me. I really don't want a man who doesn't like me. Why bother asking for trouble? When Yuan sighed, it's impossible for me and Kong Xiao. Sometimes just a little bit more, not now, but before I met Yimu Bai. Now, I don't love Yimu Bai anymore, and it seems that I don't have the ability to love someone else. I can't find that feeling of falling in love at first sight anymore. Actually, it wasn't that she couldn't find it. There were, for example, the day when he brought her to the vegetarian restaurant. Even though it was just a meal, it was different in Wen Yuan's heart. If he hadn't said those words later on, she would have thought that she was in love again. She was a little disappointed, but she didn't want to tell him. After parting with Su Mo, Wen Yuan saw that it was getting late, so she called the chauffeur at home. She went to pick up Xiangnan from school. After picking up Xiangnan was very happy. He ran over and hugged her. Mom. Wen Yuan took the school bag from his son's hand and smiled. Mom will take you to eat delicious food. Xiangnan raised his little face. What about dinner? Dad said that we can't eat a lot of junk food outside. It's okay to eat a little. Wen Yuan changed the topic. But if you don't like it, we won't eat it. Xiangnan was anxious. Isn't it okay to eat a little bit? Wen Yuan smiled and took his son to the car. After fastening the seat belt, she turned to Xiangnan in the back seat and said, Don't tell Dad. Xiangnan happily said that he wouldn't. When Wen Yuan started the car, there was a faint smile on her face. With Xiangnan and Yi Hui, the days wouldn't be too difficult. For Yimu Bai, it wasn't too bad to exercise at night. But recently, he didn't. After a few days, the couple slept in separate rooms. He didn't look for Wen Yuan, and it was even more impossible for Wen Yuan to look for him. So he just owed her. Both physically and mentally, Yimu Bai was seriously suppressed. He came back early today. When he got home, he asked the servants. The servants said that Madam went out and picked up Xiangnan. Yimu Bai looked at the time. It was already 5:30. It was long past time. He threw his coat on the sofa and sat down. He took out his phone and looked at it. Then he made a call. When Wen Yuan received Yimu Bai's call, she was in KFC with Xiangnan. Xiangnan's expression as he held the fried chicken was very indescribable. It was as if it was an incredible delicacy. She thought he's always a child. At this moment, when she heard Yimu Bai's voice, she was a little embarrassed. Where are you and Xiangnan? Yimu Bai pulled his tie. Wen Yuan looked at Xiangnan holding the chicken wing bucket with his eyes wide open. She felt a little distressed. They only ate once a year. If she went back now, Xiangnan would be very disappointed. So, she lied, I'm in the bookstore with Xiangnan. Yimu Bai paused for a moment and then said with certainty, Wen Yuan, you're lying. When he said these words, Wen Yuan felt as if she was being judged. Xiangnan was sick, but he recovered. Moreover, Qinshan also said that he was a healthy child. There was no need to raise him so expensive. It was not good for boys, but Yimu Bai insisted that Xiangnan was not allowed to eat outside. Wen Yuan was helpless, but had no choice. She could only sneak Xiangnan out occasionally and eat a little. End of this chapter. Chapter 39:21. Yimu Bai waited for her silence for a long time, so he said coldly, I can smell the fried chicken here. His tone was cold and mocking. Wen Yuan was stabbed and blurted out, I feel disgusted by what you did outside, even through the screen. Yimu Bai was stunned. He didn't expect Wen Yuan to say that. Wen Yuan was also stunned, but then she couldn't help feeling happy. She then made a big decision. I'll stay in a hotel with Xiangnan today. I won't go back. Anyway, they would sleep in separate rooms if they went back. It didn't make any difference. Yimu Bai frowned. Wen Yuan, do you know what you're talking about? You're not a child anymore. Now you're running away from home with me? What do you want? Divorce? Wen Yuan listened to his almost exasperated tone. She was very calm. After a long time, she only said one sentence. Yimu Bai, if that's what you want. After she finished speaking, she hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, she was a little worried about Xiangnan. She was afraid that he would be unhappy, but Xiangnan's eyes were already wide open. His voice was trembling with excitement. "Mom, aren't we going home today?" Before Wen Yuan could answer, Xiangnan said again, "I want to stay in a theme hotel. I also want Bai Anan to stay with me. Mom, can you call Annie Shirley?" Wen Yuan was completely stunned. She wanted to ask Xiangnan, but Xiangnan had already lowered his head and happily ate the fried chicken. After eating 2 pieces of chicken legs, he couldn't bear to eat anymore. He said pitifully, "Mom, I'll keep this to eat with Anan. Her father doesn't allow her to eat it either." Wen Yuan couldn't tell what she was feeling in her heart. Then she thought about it and said, "Can we pick up Yihui? If you can't eat it, then don't eat it. Mom can order delivery from the hotel later." Xiangnan thought about it. Yihui could also eat it, but Yihui had just grown a mouth of small teeth and couldn't eat a lot of things. But Xiangnan was a little warm man, so he said shyly, "I'll feed it to my sister." Wen Yuan smiled and led Xiangnan into the car. She drove directly to Su Fu's place. It was already dinner time, so it was a little abrupt and not Wen Yuan's usual style. Su Fu was eating with Xiaoyi. The little fellow was wearing a pretty little dress and was sitting upright. When he saw Wen Yuan and Xiangnan coming over, he happily called out to his mother and brother. Su Fu was also surprised, but she immediately asked the Annie at home to pack the food, and Hao Yun went to do it himself. "Thank you, Uncle Hao." Wen Yuan smiled faintly. He carried Xiangnan to the seat and sat down to chat with Su Fu. Su Fu looked at Wen Yuan. "Are you here to pick up Yihui?" Wen Yuan actually wanted to take care of Yihui by her side for a long time, but now that she and Yi Mubai were in such a mess, she thought about it and gave up. "I want to take Yihui back for a night and send her back tomorrow," Wen Yuan said softly. Su Fu was sure that there was something wrong with the couple's relationship. Actually, as parents, they could see that their relationship had not been good for the past 2 years. It was neither cold nor cold. The problem was still in the past. No one could do anything about the knot in Wen Yuan's heart. No matter how handsome and rich her son was, he was not attractive to Wen Yuan. She saw it and knew that Wen Yuan liked the Mubai of the past. Now, it was very difficult. Wen Yuan was like her in the past. She used to love Yi Zhenggang very much. She loved him for many years, but after what happened with Mubai and Shueli, she could not love him anymore. Now, there was also Hao Yun by Wen Yuan's side. This person was Kong Xiao, the knot in Mubai's heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 39:22. Su Fu sighed in her heart. She was afraid that her son would follow in his father's footsteps. Mubai was mature, but he was not as experienced as Mulin. This was also the reason why Yi Zhenggang let his boss go into politics instead of Mubai. Su Fu's heart raced, but she still maintained a calm smile on her face. She asked Wen Yuan to eat, then turned around to pack a set of clothes and a set of pajamas for Yihui. Xiangnan said excitedly that he wanted Yihui to wear the piggy's shoes. It was so ceremonial. Su Fu knew that Wen Yuan probably wouldn't come home tonight. She didn't say anything and even prepared snacks for the 2 kids. Wen Yuan and Bai Shuili were his 2 wives. Bai Shuili was closer to her. Although she wasn't particularly considerate, she was still cute. Wen Yuan's personality was like another Su Fu. In Su Fu's eyes, they were friends, but she was his daughter-in-law after all. There were some things that couldn't be said. After sending them to the car, Wen Yuan turned around and said, "Mom, I'll send Yihui back after I send Xiangnan to school tomorrow." Su Fu was very understanding. "In the future, if you want to bring her out to play, you can come anytime. I'll always be home." Wen Yuan was a little touched. She knew that Su Fu had noticed something, but she couldn't say it. His thoughtfulness touched her. Even her own mother wasn't as considerate as Su Fu. Wen Yuan started the car and glanced at the 2 kids behind from the rearview mirror. Xiangnan and Yihui were very happy, especially when Xiangnan carried Yihui on his lap and took care of her like a little adult. They felt very good as siblings. Apart from being siblings, Xiangnan also had Yihui's blood on him. While Wen Yuan was driving, Su Fu called Yi Mubai. "Mubai, what's going on between you and Wen Yuan?" "Nothing." Yi Mubai sat in the living room with a glass of red wine in his hand. He rubbed his forehead with the other hand. He had a headache. Mom, why do you ask? Su Fu's voice was always gentle. He said softly, when Yuan came and took Yi Hui away. What? Yi Mubai sat up straight and asked in disbelief, what does Wen Yuan want to do? Su Fu was slightly angry. She won't do anything. She said she would send Yi Hui back tomorrow morning. Oh, that's good. Yi Mubai leaned back and said in a low voice, Mom, there's nothing between us. Su Fu was silent for a while before saying, Mubai, Mom knows that you're powerful and capable now. As your mother, I'm proud of you. But as your wife, Wen Yuan won't feel comfortable seeing your scandals. You know that she has a knot in her heart. If you try to provoke her in this way, it will only make her feel colder. Mubai, think about it carefully. Don't throw her away. Wen Yuan is a very good woman, but you just don't understand her. With that, Su Fu hung up the phone and sighed again. Hao Yin poured her a cup of tea and put his arm around her shoulders. Don't worry. They will always have feelings for each other. Mubai's feelings came too late and in the wrong way. Su Fu said in a low voice, I used to stay at home all day like Wen Yuan. Later on, when I went out, I realized that the world is very high and the world is very wide. I've lived in vain in the past, but Mubai feels that it's better for Wen Yuan to stay at home. I know what he's thinking. He doesn't want Wen Yuan to come into contact with the outside world, mainly because of Kong Xiao. If Wen Yuan really retaliates one day and goes out, that will be the start of the battle between the husband and wife. It's going to make a fuss. Otherwise, it will be like the movement of the Earth's crust. If you don't let him vent, he will erupt like a volcano, Hao Yun said with a smile. Su Fu rolled her eyes at him. You're getting better and better at talking nonsense. The old couple supported her upstairs to sleep. Before they fell asleep, Su Fu touched his side and said, I'm really not used to not having little Yi Hui. Hao Yin laughed and said, You're addicted to it. You don't like it? Su Fu rolled her eyes at him. You wake up more at night than I do. You think I don't know that? After she said that, Hao Yun was silent. He did not speak for a while. Su Fu tugged at his pajamas and asked, What's wrong? He lowered his head and looked at his wife. Then, with a little guilt, he said, If I had looked for you earlier, we might have had a child. She would be as cute as Yi Hui. Su Fu leaned into his arms and murmured, It's enough for me to have you. You see, we still have a lot of children. And in Yi Hui, Xiangnan, the night slowly got late. They spoke intermittently. They were sleepy. End of chapter. Chapter 39-23. For Yi Xiangnan and Yi Hui, the night had just begun. Wen Yuan took them to the Four Seasons Hotel and booked a presidential suite. The fried chicken was also delivered, and then it was a pajama party for the two children. When the theme room was pushed open, little Yi Hui immediately threw herself on the soft big bed and rolled around. Xiangnan also rubbed his hands excitedly. After settling them down, Wen Yuan closed the door and let them play by themselves. She went to the hall outside. Every presidential suite in the Four Seasons Hotel had $1 million piano. Of course, the room was not cheap, more than 100,000 yuan a night. Of course, Wen Yuan could afford it. She could always have tens of millions of yuan in her card. This was the advantage of being Mrs. Knight. She sat in front of the piano, slowly opened the lid, put her 10 fingers on it, and gently touched it. The sweet music poured out, which was indescribably pleasant. Wen Yuan sat up straight and played A Starry Sky from memory. She sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the starry sky outside and playing slowly. She felt very beautiful. She liked this occasional disorderly. Without Yi Mubai, no one would call her Mrs. Knight. She could do what she liked, and she would not be looked at while playing the piano, wondering if she was thinking about Kong Xiao. He didn't understand her, and he never tried to understand her. He said that she loved him, but she couldn't feel it. She only felt possession. Wen Yuan had always been an independent individual. She didn't like this feeling. She didn't like being controlled. She had endured for 2 years before she had tonight. She played for 2 hours and enjoyed herself. The two children were also tired. She wanted to take care of them and fell asleep. One big and one small lay in bed, their little faces full of satisfaction. At this time, Wen Yuan remembered that Xiangnan hadn't done his homework. She hesitated for a moment and decided to be willful for once. After kissing the two little guys, she went back to the master bedroom and took a bath. The bathtub in the 5-star presidential suite was unbelievably luxurious, and there was a wine cabinet next to it. Wen Yuan rarely indulged, but tonight she wanted to indulge. She poured herself a glass of red wine, shook it gently, and took a sip. She drank a few glasses in a row. In the middle of the night, there was a light in the corner of her eyes. His phone was ringing. From the ringtone, it should be Mu Bai, but Wen Yuan didn't want to pick up his call. She did not want to hear his voice, nor did she want to see him. She drank one glass after another willfully, not thinking of tomorrow, not thinking of the future. He didn't want to think about Yi Mu Bai either. On the other side, Yi Mu Bai stood quietly in front of the French window of the villa. He was surrounded by silence. He did not know how he and Wen Yuan had ended up like this. Was it wrong that he wanted her to love him? She doesn't care about his scandals. All she cares about is whether or not she can go out to work. Isn't it good to have a nice night at home? He was willing to give her everything, as long as she stayed at home and stayed by his side. He had been standing there the whole time and hadn't eaten anything. A servant came over and said softly, "Sir, you haven't eaten yet. Do you want to start eating?" "No need," he said indifferently. After a long time, the servants behind him did not make a sound. He turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" The servant hesitated. "Sir, Madam used to wait for you at home for dinner." Then, as she waited, she stopped waiting because she couldn't wait. While Wen Yuan was waiting for Yi Mu Bai, he was socializing. He was rolling around in the colorful entertainment industry, playing all kinds of games for power and money. End of this chapter. Chapter 39-24. But he had never betrayed Wen Yuan or betrayed their marriage. Between him and Wen Yuan, it was as if they had entered a vicious circle. He could no longer give Wen Yuan the life that she yearned for, and she did not want everything that he had given her. It was actually very boring for a married couple to reach this point, but he did not want to give up. Wen Yuan, on the other hand, wanted to walk out, but she had never found a good opportunity. Was she finally going to explode now? Yi Mu Bai kept standing there until late at night. He called her again, but she still did not answer. She must have done it on purpose. She did not want to answer his call. He asked Hina to find out which hotel she was staying at. It was already midnight. Hina crawled out of bed to serve him. Finally, she found out that it was the Four Seasons Hotel. Hina said, "Mrs. Yi got a presidential suite there, the kind with a theme room." Yi Mu Bai said mildly, "Got it." He put away his phone and turned to walk into the master bedroom. He had not entered the master bedroom for many days. The bedroom was European style, and the decoration was according to Wen Yuan's preferences. She had also picked out the decorations one by one. He was too busy to spend time on these small things. Yi Mu Bai sat on the sofa and put his hand on his forehead, feeling a little headache. He thought about his mother's words for a long time, and then let out a long breath. She was not there, so he slept in the master bedroom. The pillow was filled with Wen Yuan's unique scent, faint but extremely seductive. He hugged the pillow that belonged to her in his arms impatiently, thinking that he had not hugged her for a week. Early in the morning, at the Four Seasons Hotel, Wen Yuan had slept. Xiangnan went to school at 8 o'clock, and she did not wake up until 8:30. When she woke up, she saw a message on her phone. It was from Xiangnan's teacher. She asked politely why Yi Xiangnan had not gone to school yet, and whether he was sick or something. Wen Yuan had to choose her words carefully and said that she was late with her homework. Then she remembered that Xiangnan had not finished his homework and called out to Shenin again. She patted her head and hurriedly woke Xiangnan and Yi Hui up. When the children were brushing their teeth, she called for breakfast. It was already 9 o'clock when she went out. When the door opened, Yi Mu Bai stood at the door. She was stunned for a moment. Yi Mu Bai saw the piano in front of the French window at first glance. He looked at it quietly and said calmly, "The teacher at school said that Xiangnan hasn't gone to school yet. He said that he finished his homework late." Wen Yuan was a little embarrassed and didn't know how to reply. He walked in and picked up Yi Hui, kissed her, and then patted Xiangnan's head. "Go to school, Yi Xiangnan. This is the only and the last time." Xiangnan hung his head dejectedly. "Yes, Dad." Wen Yuan wanted to say something, but his gaze was a little stern as he glanced over. He better finish his homework. Xiangnan lowered his head even more. Dad, I didn't write it. He looked at his son and didn't criticize him. He only said mildly, explain it to the teacher yourself later, okay? Oh, Xiangnan replied obediently. Yi Mubai personally drove him to school. He focused on driving, and when Yuan and the two children sat behind him, Mu Shang's car stopped at the school gate. Xiangnan carried his little school bag and still looked dejected. Bye, Mom and Dad. Then he went over and kissed his sister. Little Xiangnan thought that he didn't regret it. He was very happy last night. People always had to pay a price for their actions. This price was to write 10 times as punishment. End of chapter. Chapter 39-25. Half an hour later, Yi Mubai sent Xiangnan to school. He got out of the car and carried Xiangnan in. Yi Xiangnan looked at his father with his eyes wide open. Daddy, I'll talk to you tonight. Go to class now. Yi Xiangnan, you're a boy. Do you understand what I mean? Whose fault is it that you didn't do your homework? He looked at his son seriously. Yi Xiangnan opened his little mouth and then said gloomily, it's my own fault. It has nothing to do with Mommy. Yi Mubai reached out and touched his son's hair. At least you still have some backbone. Go in and get a meal tonight. Got it, boy? I know. Don't scream in pain and don't cry. Xiangnan sniffled. Bye, Daddy. Yi Xiangnan trotted in. Yi Mubai looked at him for a while before getting in the car. He hadn't seen Yi Hui for a few days. He opened the door of the back seat and carried Yi Hui out. He kissed her and said, I'll take you back to Grandma's house. Yi Hui opened her eyes wide. I want to go home. Although Grandma was very good and she liked her a lot, she wanted to be with her parents more. Yi Mubai was stunned for a moment, but still agreed. Okay, Daddy, call Grandma and tell her that we'll go after a while, okay? Little Yi Hui nodded happily. Yi Mubai put her back in the seat and looked at Wen Yuan deeply. Wen Yuan licked his lower lip. Take me to the hotel. My car is there. He ignored her and closed the car door. Wen Yuan was a little annoyed. It wasn't until he got in the car and fastened his seatbelt that he said lightly, I'll ask the driver to drive back. Give the car key to old Zhao. Wen Yuan didn't object anymore. Letting Xiangnan be late and not do her homework was enough to send her to the 18th level of hell. It was as if she had always been a bad mother. Wen Yuan didn't say anything. He drove the car back to the villa. He hadn't seen Yi Hui for a long time, so he didn't go to the company. He just played with Yi Hui. When Yi Hui was tired, she would lie on his body and sleep. Yi Mubai carried the little fellow to the children's room and watched her quietly for a while before returning to the master bedroom. Wen Yuan was leaning against the sofa in front of the French window, reading a book. He walked in and slowly unbuttoned his shirt, revealing his tan skin. Before Wen Yuan could react, he reached out and pulled her up into his arms. His voice was hoarse as he said, You reek of alcohol. Go wash it off. It's none of your business. She placed her hands on his shoulders and pushed him away, but not only did she not push him away, they both fell onto the sofa. He bent his legs and trapped her under him. Yi Mubai, are you going to be rough with me again? She turned her head, her eyes a little red. He whispered beside her ear, What did you do last night? Can you tell me? She didn't want to talk about it. Yi Mubai raised her eyes and stared at her for a while. She got up slightly and began to unbutton her shirt. Wen Yuan buried his face in the pillow and said in a trembling voice, Yi Mubai, don't do this to me. As he unbuttoned his shirt, he whispered, You're my wife. Why can't I touch you? His hand had just touched Wen Yuan's shoulder when she flinched and buried her face deeper. Go to bed. She still gave in because she was no match for him. It was useless for her to resist. He would only make her cry more forcefully and rudely. But now, he wanted to do it with her on the sofa and make her cry. He had deliberately made her naked, but he was neat and tidy. It was even more shameful this way. When Yuan said no, but he had already pressed down on her. At that moment, she burst into tears. They hadn't been together for many days, so he was very anxious. He didn't torture her slowly like he usually did, but he wasn't rough either. He wouldn't hurt her too much, so when Yuan buried his face in his hands and cried, Yi Mubai's voice was hoarse. Don't cry, okay? She was still crying. Her hair covered half her face, and the tip of her nose was red from crying. His heart softened a little. It was an incredible feeling. He reached out to brush her hair aside and kissed her nose. Then, he kissed her red lips for a long time before he murmured, "Did I make you uncomfortable?" She turned her face away. Her side profile was very attractive. Her red lips parted slightly, and her voice was hoarse and seductive. "I don't want to talk to you." "Then who do you want to talk to, okay?" He hugged her slender body and was very satisfied with what he was hugging. Wen Yuan bit her lip and didn't say a word. She quietly endured him. Then, she cried again. Why was he not okay? Yi Mubai pressed his lips against her ear and said in a low voice, "Why don't you scream?" "Wen Yuan, I like to hear you scream." "Okay." She felt ashamed. She was being tortured by her husband on the sofa in the bedroom during the day, especially when Yi Hui was still at home. He probably sensed her thoughts and chuckled. "Yi Hui is asleep. She won't hear you even if you scream a little louder." Wen Yuan finally opened her eyes and was stunned. His expression was very demonic. He kissed her and said expressionlessly, "Do it again." Wen Yuan was lying on her stomach with her head buried in the pillow. She was still crying softly. He covered her back and bit the soft flesh behind her ear. "It's been so many days. Wen Yuan, did you miss me, okay?" She didn't say a word, so he didn't let her go and started to torture her again. He said warmly, "But I did miss you. Do you feel it?" He was thinking about Yuan. Wen Yuan only felt ashamed. From noon until the sky was dark, Yi Mubai finally let her go. End of chapter. Chapter 39:26. On the luxurious bed, Yi Mubai got up and tidied up his clothes. Xiangnan is back. Clean up and come out for dinner later. After he left, Wen Yuan was still sprawled on the soft, snow-white bed. She bit on the pillow, which had long been bitten badly. The bedroom was filled with warmth, and it hurt to even move her body. She knew that this was Yi Mubai's punishment for her disorderly behavior last night. With the two children at home, Wen Yuan couldn't lie down no matter what. Moreover, there were marks everywhere in the room. She still had to clean it up. She propped herself up, took a shower, and tidied up the bedroom. The other places were still fine except for the bed and the sofa, which she couldn't look at anymore. She changed the bed sheets on the bed and carefully scrubbed the sofa with a small brush before drying it with a hairdryer. Yi Mubai pushed the door open and saw Wen Yuan drying the sofa. He frowned. Just let the servants do it. He closed the door after saying that for her sake. Wen Yuan bit her lip. "I'm not you." He walked over and stood beside her to take the hairdryer. "We're husband and wife. It's normal to do it on the sofa, occasionally. If you really can't put it down, you can call a professional to come and clean it." She looked down. There's no need for others to see. Yi Mubai put the hairdryer away and looked at her. There's no need to be so concerned. It's normal for other couples. Really? But they did it willingly. Wen Yuan smiled. "Let's go eat." Her smile was very faint. Yi Mubai wanted to grab her hand. She shook it off. "I'm very tired. I don't want to pester you anymore." He stared at her and smiled faintly. "I don't have time to pester you at night." Yi Xiangnan didn't do his homework and played outside until midnight. "What do you think I'll do to your son?" As he said that, he held her delicate chin and said softly, "Xiangnan is a man. He has to be punished for his mistakes." After he finished speaking, he let go of her and turned to leave. Wen Yuan hurriedly grabbed his clothes and said in a low and hoarse voice, "Yi Mubai, this has nothing to do with Xiangnan. Don't hit him." Yi Mubai was very strict with Xiangnan. If he made a mistake, he would be punished by the family law. He had beaten Xiangnan once before with a rattan cane. That time, Xiangnan almost lost his breath. Xiangnan's body was so weak, how could he withstand this? Wen Yuan's body was still hurting, but she immediately ran over and hugged him from behind. "Yi Mubai, I beg you, don't hit him. It's my fault. I shouldn't have taken him out, and I shouldn't have let him eat fried chicken. If you want to hit someone, hit me." He tilted his head and chuckled softly. "Wen Yuan, what does it matter if I hit you?" Wen Yuan hugged him tightly and refused to let go. Whenever she thought of how Xiangnan had been beaten up, she would feel so heartache that she couldn't breathe. She would feel especially terrible and despicable. She said despicably, "Mu Bai, don't hit him. My heart will ache." He stood there without moving, and his voice was also very faint. "Wen Yuan, why don't you feel sorry for me?" She was a little dazed. "You have everything." He turned around and pressed his hand gently on her shoulder, but he didn't answer her question. "I'm not satisfied. Wen Yuan, you know what I want. I want a normal wife, not a woman who can't sleep in the middle of the night and goes to the study to think about someone else. I want a woman who can treat me sincerely, and not a woman who is unwilling to sleep every time we have sex. You understand, yeah?" End of chapter. Chapter 39:27. Wen Yuan stared at her blankly. After a long time, he murmured, "Yimu Bai, is this what you want?" He didn't speak. She continued, "As long as I do what you said you wanted, you won't hit Xiangnan, right?" He still didn't speak and just lit a cigarette. Wen Yuan took a step back and walked slowly into the study. After a while, he came out with a box. She called the servant and said softly, "Throw these away." The servant hesitated, and Wen Yuan said again, "There's no need for these. Throw them away." The servant went to throw them away. Wen Yuan stood for a while and turned back. She walked up to him and stood still. She said in a very low voice, "Other things I'll..." Before she could finish speaking, he grabbed her wrist and lifted her up. "Wen Yuan, have you thought it through?" She laughed lightly. "Yimu Bai, do I have a choice? You always use sex to solve your problems, and what else can I do other than obey? Divorce?" She shook her head. "Will you give Xiangnan and Yi Hui to me?" He looked at her with a very deep and meaningful expression. He said, "Wen Yuan, you're very smart." His slender and cold fingers gently caressed her red lips, and his voice was also very faint. "I'll wait for your performance tonight." She turned her face away, unwilling to be touched by him. He smiled and didn't mind. He walked out first to eat. Wen Yuan composed himself in the bedroom before walking out. Xiangnan and Yi Hui were sitting at the dining table. Xiangnan's face was a little pale. He was probably a little scared because he was going to be punished. Wen Yuan couldn't bear to see him like this. He picked up a piece of pork rib and gave it to him. He said very gently, "Mom and Dad have talked about it. They won't hit you anymore." Xiangnan was a little surprised because his father had never changed his decision, especially when it came to principles. Thus, he shifted his gaze to Yimu Bai, his eyes full of desire. Yimu Bai's tone was very faint. Your mother pleaded for mercy. Don't do it again. Yi Xiangnan finally relaxed. He rubbed his chest as if he had just survived a disaster and let out a long breath. After Yimu Bai finished speaking, he gave Wen Yuan a meaningful look. Wen Yuan pretended not to see anything and ate quietly. Yimu Bai didn't say anything. He took care of the two kids and ate together. Xiangnan was especially well-behaved today. Not only did he eat by himself, but he also took care of his sister. He was indeed a sweet boy. After eating, he brought Yi Fenghui to his room. He even showed her the manga and did his homework. Yimu Bai was satisfied with his son's performance. He went to the study to deal with some matters. When he came back, he watched as Xiangnan finished his homework, took care of little Yi Hui, and went to sleep together. The two little ones were lying side by side. Yi Hui was hugging her brother with her chubby little hands. Her pinkish little fingernails were all pink. Yimu Bai felt warm in his heart just by looking at it. He kissed Xiangnan and said in a low voice, "Don't do this again." Xiangnan was worried. "Dad, will you change your mind?" Yimu Bai smiled. "No." He reached out and pinched the little boy's face. Actually, he loved his son no less than Wen Yuan. It was just that Wen Yuan spent more time with the child than him. He closed the door and turned to the master bedroom. Wen Yuan had taken a bath. He changed into a set of pajamas and sat in front of the dressing table to dry his hair. He recognized that the pajamas she was wearing were the ones he had bought for her. She had never worn them before, but she had put them on tonight. It was obvious that she wanted to please him. End of this chapter. Chapter 39:28. He walked over softly and hugged her shoulders from behind, burying his face in her hair. She had washed her hair, and it smelled fresh. His touch caused Wen Yuan's body to tremble slightly. "Wen Yuan, you look scared." He nibbled on her neck with a force that made her want to scream. She closed her eyes. What do you want? What do I want? His kiss moved over, and he held her head with one hand, turning her head to let him kiss her. He kissed her lightly, and his voice was even lower. Do you know what kind of punishment Xiangnan had to go through before? Wen Yuan didn't want to face it, but he had already picked her up and thrown her onto the soft bed. Wen Yuan lay on her stomach, feeling very embarrassed. He bent over and half-knelt on both sides, leaning forward slightly and pressing his lips against her ear. Should I go first, or should you go first? Wen Yuan felt that no matter which choice she made, it would be very perverted. She bit the pillow and refused to speak, so he laughed and raised his hand to slap her. He used a lot of force, and soon a red mark appeared. Wen Yuan cried out and buried her face in the pillow. She was very embarrassed to be treated like this by a man. They were both trading stocks, but he could come up with all sorts of tricks to make her feel ashamed. Yi Mubai pressed his lips against her ear, his voice hot. I wanted to let you go, but you were the one who wanted to dress like this to provoke me. He hit her every time he said a sentence. Wen Yuan cried softly and begged him to stop, but she didn't know that a woman's crying and begging would only make a man's beast jade stronger. And every time he hit her, she would beg softly. The beast blood in Yi Mubai's body was almost ignited. She cried softly and begged him continuously. Yi Mubai pulled her hair gently and turned her around. He couldn't help but go over and kiss her when he saw her messy appearance. After torturing her for the entire afternoon, he was excited again. You're willing to treat me like this because you miss Nan. That's why you're willing to please me and please me. Isn't that right? His voice was extremely sexy, and his warm breath fell on her neck. If it wasn't because you miss Nan, you wouldn't wear or do it. Isn't that right? Wen Yuan was folded in his arms, so fragile that it seemed like she would break at any moment. Her black spaghetti-strap pajamas fell halfway down, and her black hair spread over her shoulders like seaweed. He leaned close to her ear and whispered, "Kiss me." She was trembling uncontrollably. Even though she was unwilling, she still lifted her face to kiss him. She kissed the corner of his mouth. He wasn't satisfied and directly kissed her on the lips. He was so ferocious, as though he wanted to swallow her whole. After kissing for a long time, he finally let her go. He pulled away slightly and said in a low voice, "Kiss downward." She had been married to him for a few years and had many affairs, but she still did not know how to do it because she rarely took the initiative. All she needed to do was lie down and endure or enjoy. Wen Yuan was trembling uncontrollably and clumsily followed his instructions, kissing him bit by bit. In the end, she cried. Yi Mubai reached out and pulled her up, hugged her in his arms, and kissed her lips. His voice was very low. Wen Yuan, remember, this is my scent. She went to the bathroom and washed herself 3 times, but she still couldn't wash the scent off. Later, she sat on the toilet and cried. She cried very sadly. Yi Mubai appeared at the bathroom door. He had already changed into a bathrobe. He looked at her quietly and reached out to pull her up, pressing her against the sink. Wen Yuan was stunned. She looked up at him. Haven't you had enough? Yi Mubai kissed her and didn't say a word. He just wanted to do it to his heart's content. It wasn't until late at night that he let her go. His voice was also low and husky. Wen Yuan, you've starved me for too long. She cried and was very tired. In the end, he carried her back to the master bedroom and cleaned her up. That night, he slept beside her. When Wen Yuan fell asleep, she only heard his voice. Be good, okay? Early in the morning, it was already 9 o'clock when Wen Yuan woke up. Her pillow was empty. She was a little absent-minded as she thought about what happened last night. Her face was very hot and ashamed. She calmed herself down and went out. After asking the servants at home, she found out that Yi Mubai had sent Xiangnan himself, and that he had brought Yi Hui to the company. The servant hesitated for a moment. Sir said to let Madam go to the company. Sir has a meeting in the afternoon, and Little Miss wants to take an afternoon nap. Wen Yuan said mildly that she got it, and then she went back to the bedroom to freshen up. She felt a little complicated. She didn't want to see him. Every time she saw him, she would be reminded of his bad behavior last night. However, Wen Yuan couldn't leave Yi Hui in his company. After she freshened up, she had breakfast and went to his company. When she arrived, it was almost 10:30. The receptionist saw Won Yuan, and this time she recognized her. She respectfully sent CEO Ye's wife to the elevator and said with a smile, "CEO Yi is waiting for you." Won Yuan forced a smile and walked into the elevator. End of chapter. Chapter 39-29. When they reached the top floor, Andy stood to welcome them. "Madam, President Yi and Little Miss are inside." She paused for a moment. "Madam, you may have forgotten that today is Stars Entertainment's annual meeting." Won Yuan had indeed forgotten. Yi Mubai had mentioned it before, but she hadn't been reassured. Moreover, they had quarreled after that. Now that Andy was talking about people, she remembered it and didn't say anything. She pushed the door open and went in. Yi Mubai wasn't working. He was sitting on the sofa with Yi Hui, putting together building blocks. Little Yi Hui was completely focused. Her hair was tied in 2 pigtails, and she was wearing a floral dress. She looked very happy and seemed to be very happy to be with her father. Won Yuan watched quietly. She suddenly felt that everything that had happened last night was worth it. Although it was a little unbearable, she walked over and Yi Mubai looked up. "You're here," she grunted and sat next to Yi Hui. Yi Hui looked up at her mother and then felt a little homesick. She stopped playing with the building blocks and leaned into Won Yuan's arms, calling her mother. Won Yuan hugged her for a while and then put her on his lap to accompany her. Yi Mubai watched for a while and patted Won Yuan's shoulder. "Stay with her. I'm going to handle some work." He walked over after saying that. Won Yuan looked at him sideways and was a little surprised at his stamina. He had done it many times yesterday afternoon and night. Wasn't he tired? Won Yuan didn't know where he got his stamina from. Anyway, she was still very tired and sleepy. She thought of what Andy said and now understood why he didn't leave marks on her neck and arms. Also, why he brought Yi Hui here. She had to come if Yi Hui was here. Won Yuan was a little lost in thought. Yi Mubai was flipping through some documents behind his desk. Occasionally, he looked up and saw her. He said lightly, "Let's have lunch together. Take Yi Hui to take a nap in the afternoon. The stylist will be here at 4 o'clock." He paused for a moment. "Xiangnan and Yi Hui will be there too." Won Yuan was stunned. Yi Mubai was actually not a high-profile person. Won Yuan knew why he was doing this. He wanted to make it look like they were a happy family in front of Concho. Won Yuan said in a low voice, "Can Xiangnan and Yi Hui not attend?" He looked at her. Won Yuan lowered his eyes. "Yi Mubai, I can give you anything you want, but I don't want my child to be exposed." Yi Mubai smiled. "You're right. Is that a yes?" But Won Yuan knew that she had to pay the price. After lunch, Yi Hui fell asleep while Won Yuan splashed water on his face in the bathroom. Yi Mubai appeared in the mirror. One arm easily hooked around her waist. She was forced to straighten up and lean against his chest. Won Yuan stared at him in the mirror. So did he. He buried his face in her shoulder. "What are you thinking about? How are you going to face Concho tonight?" "Yi Mubai, can you stop mentioning him? I've said that I have nothing to do with him, and I won't have anything to do with him in the future. Why do you always torture me because of someone you have nothing to do with?" Won Yuan felt that he was biting her. She resisted. "Yi Mubai, don't kiss here. It would leave a mark." As she said this, she heard him chuckle, very low and deep. Then he raised his eyes and looked at her. "I'm afraid that he will see." She wanted to say something, but she felt a pain in her shoulder. She opened her eyes and looked at the decadent look in the mirror. That feeling of despair appeared again. He didn't believe her. He wanted to possess her, no matter what method he used, as long as he was happy. End of chapter. Chapter 39-30. He didn't care about her feelings or what she thought. He persisted in his own way. At this moment, Won Yuan was very tired. A very dark kiss mark was left on her shoulder. It was very warm. She looked at it quietly and said softly, "Yi Mubai, are you satisfied?" He looked at her in the mirror and adjusted her clothes for her. "Go to sleep. The stylist will be here at 3. At this moment, Won Yuan really wanted to ignore everything. She just wanted to say a few words to him. "I don't want to live anymore." Was it wrong to not love him anymore? Did she have to be tortured by him like this? She was too tired and wronged as the glamorous Mrs. Yi. She lived in the shadows and couldn't see the sun. She lost herself. She didn't resist anymore. She went to the lounge to sleep and did as he said. Yi Mubai looked at the closed door and frowned. Finally, he clenched his fists. At 3, the chauffeur sent Yi Hui home, and the stylist came to do Wen Yuan's hair. Andy had arranged for Dior to send over a 2020 spring gown. It was an ash-colored long chiffon gown with a Dior logo on the shoulder. The dress was very elegant, and the layers spread out at the waist, making it seem like her waist was too small. The stylist tied her hair up and paired it with a pair of high heels. The effect was very good. Mrs. Yi is so beautiful. She looks a little like Sister Chilling, the stylist praised. Yi Mubai stood at the side and smiled. He saw the kiss mark on her shoulder. The stylist had seen the world and pretended not to see it. She only sighed in her heart. Mrs. Yi was so beautiful that CEO Yi couldn't bear to let go of her. Yi Mubai reached out and touched it lightly. Then, he took out a box from his pocket. There was a red diamond necklace in it. There was a 2-carat diamond hanging on the thin chain. It looked very dazzling. Wen Yuan looked at it quietly. The diamond was very beautiful. It was something that many women wanted. But in her eyes, it was like a shackle that trapped her. He hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her hair. "Do you like it?" Wen Yuan said calmly. "Very beautiful." "Is it only beautiful?" He laughed softly, and then the smile in his eyes slowly disappeared. "It's not as good as the Dongzhu he gave me, is it?" Wen Yuan turned around and said, "Yi Mubai, aren't you being silly? Can you stop mentioning Kong Xiao? Everything you've done is because of Kong Xiao. Do you mind him like this because you love me, or are you afraid that I'll make you a cuckold and ruin your reputation?" She couldn't take it anymore and said, "Actually, there's another way." His expression didn't look too good. He gestured for the others to leave. Then he reached out to hold her chin and leaned forward. "Wen Yuan, don't even think about it. Be Mrs. Yi tonight." He looked at her and then dragged her out. But after 2 steps, he pulled her back and pressed her against the door, kissing her wantonly. His kiss was so deep that Wen Yuan was hurt. She pushed him, but she couldn't move him at all. Her lips were slightly swollen from his kiss, and she was a little absent-minded. Her heart was beating so fast that it almost stopped. Yi Mubai's voice was very hoarse. "Wen Yuan, remember, you're mine. You're Yi Mubai's woman, wife. You'll be mine forever." Her legs were a little weak, and she could barely stand. She leaned against the door and smiled lightly. "Is that so?" His tone was unhappy. "Don't challenge me. Otherwise, you'll know that life won't be easy." End of chapter. Chapter 39-31. The banquet was held at the biggest hotel in B City, G. There was a starry sky in front of the hotel. Yi Mubai appeared with Wen Yuan. He held Wen Yuan's hand and walked straight down the red carpet. Yi Mubai was naturally handsome, and Wen Yuan didn't pale in comparison to him at all. She was dressed in a smoke-colored dress and looked dreamy. Coupled with the fire diamond between her collarbones, she looked dazzling. Previously, many people thought that Yi Mubai's wife rarely showed her face because she wasn't outstanding. But tonight, they saw that she was as beautiful as a fairy, and they clearly had a good relationship. Yi Mubai felt that the palms of the people around him were sweating. He had a charming smile on his face as he faced the camera and whispered, "Nervous," when Yuan didn't say anything. She stood at the back of the red carpet with him for the interview. He was at ease and smiled lazily. Occasionally, he would look at Wen Yuan with deep affection in his eyes. Wen Yuan didn't know if he was tired from acting. She forced a smile and felt a little numb. Yi Mubai had accepted the interview and was going to be photographed with Wen Yuan. It was good enough that they were holding hands, but he pulled her into his arms and put his arm on her shoulder possessively. Wen Yuan wasn't used to it and whispered, "You don't have to get so close. Didn't I say that this is the price you have to pay?" He lowered his voice even more and walked towards the banquet hall with her in his arms. In the banquet hall, the melodious sound of the violin was already playing. The host introduced Yi Mubai and Wen Yuan to all the guests excitedly. "We warmly welcome President Yi and Mrs. Yi." Wen Yuan's body stiffened when she stepped in because she could tell that it was Kong Xiao's violin. Many years ago, she would lean under a tree and Kong Xiao would stand at the window and play this song. It was called Summer Night. At this moment, Wen Yuan felt like she had returned to the past as she listened. She knew that Kong Xiao was telling her not to lose herself. He was telling her that she was Wen Yuan and that she once had a dream. Wen Yuan stopped. She looked at Kong Xiao quietly, and her gaze was a little dazed. At this moment, Yi Mubai directly held her hand and went on stage. He began to speak to the audience. His speech was very short, about 2 to 3 minutes. Then, the host, Yi, announced the start of the dance. In that song, Yi Mubai was dancing with Wen Yuan in his arms. The combination of a handsome man and a beautiful woman was especially pleasing to the eyes. Wen Yuan was in his arms, and she could feel Kong Xiao's gaze on her. She lowered her eyes, unwilling to look or listen. In a trance, the song ended. She wanted to retreat, but her waist was buckled. She looked up in surprise and saw a pair of deep eyes. His voice was very deep. "Kiss me." Wen Yuan was stunned. "Yi Mubai." He grabbed her waist and forced her towards him. His voice was hoarse and hoarse. "Kiss me." She saw the determination in his eyes, so she bit her lip, tiptoed over, and kissed him lightly on the lips. However, her waist was immediately held down, and she had nowhere to retreat. She muttered absent-mindedly, "Yi Mubai." The two of them were very close. Wen Yuan slowly moved her lips over and gently touched his lips. She thought it was just a light kiss, but just as she was about to move away, he suddenly grabbed the back of her head and kissed her lips fiercely. Translator, King Bao editor, Dark Jim. Everyone was stunned. It was a deep kiss, and it was in public. CEO Yi kissed his own wife in public. It was very shameful. When Yuan's body froze in his arms, she opened her eyes and looked at him. He was the same. In a chapter that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.